Hello, my name is Nell, and today I'm going to be talking about something quite serious. I'll be talking about the prevalence of intimate partner violence in Australian teens aged 18 to 19. It's very serious, and I will just consider this a content warning because we will be talking about abuse, domestic abuse, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. So if that is too much, please click off and find another video to watch because this is not for you. But before I get too far into it, hello, my name is Nell, and I have things to say about disability, chronic illness, mental health, and occasionally current events. If that sounds like something that interests you, I would love it if you would subscribe to the channel. Come back every second Wednesday when I upload new videos. Let me know what you think of my videos in the comments section, and if you know of somebody who would benefit from or enjoy one of my videos or the whole channel, please feel free to share a link with them. So a study has just been released with information about intimate partner violence, which I'll refer to as IPV from here on out because it's a bit of a mouthful, among Australian 18 to 19-year-olds. It was conducted by the Longitudinal Study of Australian Children, which has been following about and surveying about 10,000 children in Australia for almost 20 years. The study was looking at the prevalence of IPV among Australian teens in that older age bracket, what abusive behaviours were common in those relationships, and what part supportive relationships with parents and peers played in reducing the risk of IPV. When I heard about this study being released, I found it particularly interesting because I was 19 and then 20 when I was in an intimate partner violence relationship with an older man. So reading the study and seeing not only the prevalence of this, but also the risk factors was very interesting. They provide definitions for intimate partner violence and victim survivor, which are two keywords that come up in this study. I will give you their definitions. Intimate partner violence. Across research and policy in both Australia and elsewhere, intimate partner violence can also be referred to as domestic violence, domestic and family violence, domestic abuse, domestic violence and abuse, and dating violence. The terms adolescent dating violence and teen dating violence are also common when describing intimate partner violence among young people. In this snapshot, the term intimate partner violence is used throughout. Victim survivor. In this snapshot, young people who have experienced intimate partner violence victimization will be referred to as victim survivors. This is the most widely used term to describe someone who has experienced intimate partner violence, family and domestic violence, or gender-based violence victimization, which acknowledges their strength and resilience. There were 6 key findings in this study. One was that around 3 in 10 adolescents ages 18 to 19 years, which is 30%, reported at least one experience of IPV in the previous year. 2. Emotional abuse was experienced by 1 in 8 adolescents aged 18 to 19 years, 12.5% in the previous year. 3. Physical violence was experienced by 1 in 10 adolescents aged 18 to 19 years, 10% in the previous year. 4. 1 in 12 adolescents aged 18 to 19 years, 8%, experienced sexual abuse in the previous year. Sexual abuse was more prevalent among females aged 18 to 19 years than males of the same age. 5. Supportive friendships throughout adolescence reduce the risk of later emotional abuse victimization by 36%. 6. High trust and good communication with parents during adolescence reduce the risk of later emotional abuse victimization by 39% and sexual abuse victimization by 77%. Now, females are more likely to be victim survivors than males. 11% of female teens reported sexual abuse compared to 4% of males. The rate of emotional and physical abuse didn't differ significantly between genders. 17% of teens in this age group reported experiencing one type of IPV. 8% reported experiencing 2 types, and 4% reported experiencing all 3 types. 5% of female victim survivors reported experiencing all 3 types, and 3% of males reported the same. Emotional and physical abuse were the most likely to co-occur, reported by 7% of male victim survivors and 5% of female victim survivors. Emotional and sexual abuse were the least likely combination, reported by 3% of females and 1% of males. Emotional abuse was the most prevalent form of IPV. Just over 16% of emotional abuse victim survivors reported that their partner claimed they were crazy, stupid, or not good enough, using those kinds of language terms. Around 12% of victim survivors of emotional abuse reported that their abuser blamed them for their abuse. 12% of victim survivors of emotional abuse reported that technology was used in the abuse. It occurs over the phone, by text message or email, or through social media. And 2% of victim survivors of emotional abuse reported financial abuse, including being kept from their job, money, or financial resources. These are usually things that we see or assume happens in very adult relationships, in marriage relationships, in de facto relationships. These are happening to people who are only just adults, who were just children a year ago. Now on to physical abuse. The most common forms of physical abuse being reported by about 10% of victim survivors, of physical violence victim survivors, included being shaken, pushed, grabbed, or thrown. Half as common was being hit with a fist or object, kicked or bitten, or having any of these behaviours being attempted. Least common being reported by 2 to 3% of victim survivors of physical violence, with the more extreme forms of violent abuse, which is being choked, being harmed or threatened with harm by a weapon, or being locked in or confined in a room. There are some preventative or protective factors that can reduce the risk. Having close friendships during adolescence can reduce the risk of emotional abuse victimization by 36%. Part of the report says, close friendships are a key source of social support for adolescents and are especially advantageous to well-being when they provide a trusting space for young people to talk through their thoughts, feelings, and difficulties. Now, these friendships can also lower the risk of IPV in adulthood. Trust and good communication with parents during adolescence can also reduce the risk of emotional abuse victimization by 39% and sexual abuse victimization by 77%. The report states, parent-child relationships that are supportive, trusting, and promote good communication through adolescence can foster constructive conflict resolution skills for future intimate relationships. Now, there were a few follow-up points and questions from the study. Parents, teachers, and health practitioners need to be aware that young men are just as at risk of IPV as young women. Young women are at higher risk of sexual abuse in relationships, but the risks for emotional and physical abuse are very similar. We need more programs that address gender inequality and combat violent and abusive relationships, abusive behaviors in relationships. These sorts of programs have worked in reducing IPV among youth in other countries, and we need it here. We need to ask what protection is available for young people who don't have a good relationship with their parents or their peers, who don't have positive role models and positive relationships being modeled at home. How can adults outside the household reach out? Are there extracurricular activities that these people can be involved in? As the researchers continue to survey these young people who have experienced IPV, will they see an effect on the way they develop relationships in young adulthood, or the timing of the way that they form their families and make those family planning decisions? There's also the question of whether this data will change once the surveys are done in another few years. Will the rates of IPV in this age group remain the same? This study has been very interesting to me as someone who fell into that age bracket when I was experiencing intimate partner violence. I experienced emotional and sexual abuse with a little bit of physical force involved. I did not have an open, trusting relationship with my parents. We didn't talk about relationships. We didn't talk much at all. We didn't have very good relationships. I didn't have very good relationships with either of my parents. It had always been rocky, and particularly in my teen years. As for my friendships, I had rocky friendships in early high school. My friends often came from broken homes, and so that's what I saw when I was visiting them. They had boyfriends who didn't treat them well, so that's what was modeled to me. They weren't supportive friendships. There was a lot of persuasion. There was a lot of influencing going on. And then I moved when I was 16, which is in that important adolescent window. I had to create new friendships. I had to make new friends. I kind of managed that. But then I moved again at 18, and I met people who were a lot older than me, a lot more experienced in the world. I met my boyfriend. And it wasn't an environment where I could be supported. I was away from the friends, the good friends who knew me, of the good friends who could support me. They weren't seeing me in that environment. I couldn't really share my fears, and they couldn't pick up on the situation that I was in, so I was in trouble. I think these sorts of reports need to be spread. This awareness needs to be spread, because it's not just that domestic violence and intimate partner violence is happening to adults. It's not just happening to people in their 30s or 20s or 30s or 40s. This is happening to people who only just became adults, who were just children. They're just out of school. Some of them are still in school, and these are their formative years. These are their earliest relationships, and this is how they're learning. And we need to wonder, where are they learning this? What examples are being set for them where they think this is how relationships work? Food for thought. Food for thought. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, and for learning with me. I'll see you in the next one. Bless. My camera cut off because I was talking too long. So yeah, I will see you in the next one. Bless.